Tonight on Primetime Politics, parting shots.
Their partisan strategy is simple: obstruct, obstruct, obstruct.
It has been a gigantic counterfeit operation under Mark Carney.
Members of Parliament exchange warm words as they break for the holidays. But what was accomplished and what needs to be tackled when Parliament gets back in the new year will convene our political strategists. And there will have to be an acceptance on Canada's part that the auto industry will never be what it once was here.
Didn't say that. The president didn't say that.
A sit down with the American ambassador as Pete Hoekstra and I talk trade, security, and the future of the Canada-U.S. relationship. This is Primetime Politics. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. We'll get to those stories in a moment, but first, some developing news as Pierre Poilievre has lost another member of his Conservative caucus, Michael Mah, who you see right there, the Member of Parliament for the Toronto area riding of Markham-Unionville, has announced this evening he is crossing the floor and joining the governing Liberals. In a statement, Mr. Mah writes, "I have concluded that Prime Minister Mark Carney is offering the steady, practical approach we need to deliver on the priorities I hear every day while door knocking in Markham-Unionville. That includes," he says, "making life more affordable, growing a strong Canadian economy, strengthening community safety, and creating real opportunities for young people and families who are working hard to build their Canadian dream. I entered public service," writes Mr. Mah, "to help people to focus on solutions, not division. I look forward to working with Prime Minister Carney to make sure that Markham-Unionville and all of Canada can move forward with confidence and build a stronger, safer, and more prosperous future." Again, that is the statement released this evening from Michael Mah, former Conservative Member of Parliament, now crossing the floor and joining the governing Liberals. That now means that Mark Carney is just one seat shy of a majority in the House of Commons. We are tracking the story for you here on CPAC. Well, with that, let's go back to what was our top story this evening before Mr. Mah's announcement. The House of Commons rising for its holiday break. And with that, take a listen to the parting shots shared by senior politicians on the Hill.
For the last 3 months, the Conservatives have adopted and executed a clear political strategy that is self-serving and selfish. Their partisan strategy is simple: obstruct, obstruct, obstruct. Obstruct debates and votes in the House of Commons and play silly games at committees to block the advancement of government legislation.
It has been a gigantic bait and switch. While Mark Carney copies my words, he doesn't put them into practice. Everything is worse. He promised a deal with Trump. There's still no deal. Foreign American tariffs are double. He's not reduced a single foreign tariff on Canada since taking office, promising to be a massive deal maker. It has been a gigantic counterfeit operation under Mark Carney that has left Canadians paying more, feeling more endangered, and more in debt.
Liberal House Leader Steve McKinnon and Conservative Leader Pierre Poilievre. Now, what you're about to hear is a conversation that we recorded earlier today with our political strategists, a conversation that focused on the end of this fall sitting of the House of Commons, a conversation that happened before news of this latest defection, Michael Mah joining the Liberal government. Susan Smith, a Liberal strategist, co-founder and principal at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Cole Hogan is a Conservative strategist. And George Soule, former NDP Director of Communications, now founder and principal at On Step Strategies. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, Michael. Hello.
Okay, so here we have it. The Parliament rising for its winter holiday break. Good time to do an assessment with the Prime Minister 8 months into the job. He has moved on a number of his priorities, but I would also make the argument that his priorities has exposed divisions within the Liberal caucus. How would you assess this time period and how the Prime Minister has done, Susan?
Well, the time period as Prime Minister, the whole year. I mean, it's been quite the year, right? And I'm a whole lot happier at the end of this year than I was in January. I can tell you when the Liberals were 20 points behind and Justin Trudeau stepped down and we didn't know what was going to happen. So a lot has happened, including Mark Carney winning the leadership and then coming in as Prime Minister. And I think he's executed well for someone who is new to politics, new to this kind of public life, launched into the middle of a trade maelstrom, I would say, with Donald Trump and then the rest of the globe trying to sort it all out. I think he's done all right. He's trying to pivot the Canadian economy to build Canada strong. Those are his words that he chooses. But laying the groundwork for major projects, in putting down a budget in place that's saying that we're going to use Canadian materials to build Canadian things, investing in the military, raising people's pay in the military, trying to build more houses, those kinds of things. I think that's a good start, given a year where the big loud roar from the U.S. has been constant, but with no ability to predict what will happen next.
Mm-hmm. Cole, what do you make of the Prime Minister's first 8 months?
Yeah, well, to Susan's point, what a year indeed. I think, we've seen the Liberal Party come from what was sure electoral doom to winning a minority government, no small feats. And this election, of course, focused around Donald Trump and the threat of tariffs. So far in the 8 months of the premiership, I would argue that we haven't seen a lot of tangible results on Trump and trade. But so far in this session, as it wraps up today, Mark Carney, the Liberal government, did push forward Bill C-5. They got the Alberta-Ottawa MOU put forward, which I think is a good thing for the governments and the government of Alberta and Canadians at large. But now comes the actual political gamesmanship part. So we have to see now, how does Mark Carney and his new Liberal caucus, which consists of a lot of Trudeau-era people, how do they manage the fact of the different reactions to this MOU? We saw Tim Hodgson say this week that the whole Liberal caucus supports the MOU, but we know that's not true because we've seen Stephen Guilbeault and multiple Liberal MPs from BC and elsewhere criticize this MOU and pipelines generally. So now, in terms of the political calculus, how do they sow this apparent division within their caucus? How does Mark Carney, after what is a very successful year, manage his caucus and the political calculus going forward?
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. But George, your assessment?
Well, I think Mark Carney saved the Liberal Party from, for sure, losing. So you got to tip your hat to that. There's no doubt about it. That's a huge success. I think as far as what actually has happened since then, it's been a lot of talk and kind of fair enough. It hasn't been a huge amount of time, but there haven't been a whole lot of actual accomplishments, right? Like an MOU has been signed, bills have been tabled, but not passed and enacted. So again, there's a lot of planning and talking. Mark Carney saved the Liberal Party. He promised to save Canada from Donald Trump. There's been no real evidence of his ability to do, pull a rabbit out of a hat the way he kind of promised Canadians he would during the election. So I think that's what's going to come next is can he ran and won on the promise of being able to deal with Donald Trump. That was always going to be a near impossible task. I'm not going to pretend that anything other than that, but he kind of did pretend it was different during the campaign, and so we'll see how that goes. I think it's going to be a challenge for him. But yeah, I think so far in this year, he's got to be happy with the fact that he's still in government. I don't think anybody on the governing side expected that. And now it is, can he actually deliver for Canadians? That'll be the next question.
I also think Mark Carney saved Canada from Pierre Poilievre. He was a guy who was going to win if Trudeau had stayed in. He was the guy who was campaigning on Canada was broken. And by Trudeau stepping down and Carney stepping in, he gave Canadians, moderate Canadians, a choice between someone who had considerable experience on the global stage, who'd worked in business, worked in the private sector, worked in government, versus someone who had been a career heavily partisan politician, and Canadians made a clear choice on that. So I don't think that should be overlooked either, because that changed the trajectory of this country, and it changed, I think, the optimism that Canadians, I don't think are ebullient or bubbling over with, but I don't think there's the level of despair that there might have been if someone without a playbook for Trump had stepped in and we'd be operating under the Poilievre agenda.
Okay, I suspect you want to respond to that.
Yeah, so yes, I do. If Canada isn't broken, if things are just all fine and dandy now that Mark Carney's here, the Liberals have to actually prove that. If you're a young Canadian and you're concerned about immigration, the cost of living, the strains on our housing system, how is Mark Carney and the Liberal government actually going to make that better? Are they going to be able to deliver on these huge national energy projects? Can a pipeline get built despite divisions in the Liberal caucus? If Mark Carney and the Liberal government can't define on these things, and these issues, let's be clear, Pierre Poilievre has defined the political issue matrix for the last 3-4 years, and if Mark Carney and the Liberal government can't deliver on these issues that matter, particularly to young Canadians, can they maintain their electoral coalition and win the next election?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to add anything to that, George?
I don't know. It's a lot of ifs and buts, right? If there were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. I think that who knows where things would have gone. I think I go back to my original point. I think Mark Carney's done a lot of talking. There's been a lot of things said. There's been a lot of plans laid out. There's nothing to show for any of that yet, which again, I think that's fair. I'm not holding him to that, but I think that he only has so many months before that where he's got to show, not just tell.
Yeah, and But also, the fact is that there is a division in the Liberal caucus right now. And to Cole's point, the Prime Minister not only needs to deliver to Canadians, but he has to even deliver to his own caucus, make sure that they get over the finish line together. There's a division in the Conservative caucus, too. There's a guy, Matt Generou's not running again. There's a guy, Chris D'Entremont, who came over to the Liberal Party. But they're not promising
There's a cabinet minister that's no longer part of the Liberal government.
That's okay, but he stepped aside, and I think that's fine. I think, look, I don't believe that any caucus is ever going to agree 100% all the time on all the issues. But I think what the Liberal caucus does agree is that they support the Prime Minister. And some may have differing issues on different elements of it. I don't know. Does everybody in your caucus agree with Leslyn Lewis and all the crazy stuff that she believes? I'm not sure. But I think people are united behind Prime Minister Carney. They're united behind his economic agenda, and they will work through in a democratic way the solutions that they need to have. And there's room for people to say, yeah, I don't agree with that. It's not a hammer the same way the Conservative caucus is.
Listen, you use the word conservative. I'm going to use that to switch topic here right now, because I also want to talk about Pierre Poilievre. You said if it weren't for what happened, he would have been Prime Minister in different circumstances, but he now faces a leadership review because he did not win the last election. It was going to happen in late January. Take a look right now at some Angus Reid numbers that came out today, because they are noting a softening in support amongst Conservative voters for Poilievre. This was in August, 68% believing that Conservative voters believing that he should stay on as leader. Fast forward to December, that drops by 10%, 58% now. And bearing in mind that Joe Clark resigned after getting 66.9%. So what does this say about the challenge ahead for Pierre Poilievre? I'll get you to start us off, Cole.
Sure. So I think Pierre is still in for smooth sailing for the leadership review in January in Calgary. And there's 2 points that I think speak to a change of tactics in the Conservative movement and the Conservative Party. After the election, we saw a lot of new Conservative, millennial Conservative MPs out there on political panels, on TV, and on shows that they normally wouldn't be on. Melissa Lantsman, Shuv Majumdar, Adam Chambers, Jamil Javani. They're putting a different face forward on the Conservative Party and movement to say, look, it's not all about Pierre, although he is the leader, and a lot of the comms will obviously focus around him. Another point that I have to reference in terms of the changing tone that we all talk about all the time is the mere fact that Pierre Poilievre actually showed up to the Parliamentary Press Gallery dinner here in Ottawa. Hold on. This guy was able to show up, be self-deprecating, laugh at himself, and schmooze with journalists for the night. If that's not a change in tone, I don't know what is.
Okay, go, Susan.
I'm glad that's not a stock pick that I have to go put money on. Pierre Poilievre is going to have to do a lot more than be able to make fun of himself occasionally at an event that every other political leader has been going to for decades, right? He's finally learning to get over himself. They're finally giving permission for other people to speak, where it's not entirely the Pierre show. I think he will win the leadership race. It will not be those resounding numbers, and he'll have some explaining to do around that. But I don't think there's anybody. He was calculating enough to call a January leadership review after he lost the election and lost his seat, so that no one could organize fast enough to dump him. But you do hear rumblings in that caucus. Everybody is not completely united with how he's doing things. And, you know, when he was asked, did he learn anything after D'Entremont crossed the floor, he said no. About his leadership style, no. Completely dismissive. So I remain skeptical if the Leopard can change his spots. He'll attempt a few things, but he'll survive the leadership convention, and he'll be back. He'll be back in the spring.
I think a question that needs to be asked. I agree. He'll survive the leadership convention. Can he build the numbers? Because at the end of the day, that's what the party's looking for: more votes. What, a million votes they're looking for in order to deliver government. Can you do it with Pierre Poilievre as leader? When you look at amongst Conservative voters, a softening of support. George, what do you say?
Well, and that's it. And that's like the difference between a poll of even Conservative voters versus who's going to be at convention is huge, right? So I actually agree that as far as the base goes, the people that go to convention, I mean, the same people that booed Danielle Smith for having the gall to try to work with the federal government, those people will be at that convention, and they will vote to keep Pierre Poilievre as leader, for sure. That said, I don't think he's ever going to be Prime Minister because he's not building support. Sure, he's losing his caucus a bit. I think it's a bit strange to have Susan attack Pierre Poilievre for being controlling when we have a Prime Minister who's telling his cabinet ministers what color shoes they're allowed to wear. And I think that, you know, the power is keeping people around Mark Carney, and Pierre Poilievre doesn't have the power to hold people together, and that will slowly continue to erode. And until the Conservatives figure that out, they're not going to be a serious contender for government.
Okay, well, last word to George. As we look towards the holiday break, we are going to reconvene in January. But until then, Susan, Cole, George, thank you for this and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
You too.
And in closing that, I want more than candies and nuts. Just saying.
That was a good one. I like that. Good line.
Okay, thanks, guys. Well, as the parliamentary calendar for 2025 begins to wrap up here in Ottawa, I did have the opportunity today to sit down with the American ambassador, Pete Hoekstra, a trusted ally of the U.S. president. We talked about trade, security, and the future of the Canada-U.S. relationship. Here now is a part of that conversation. I was in the White House both times that the Prime Minister was there in the Oval Office, and I heard the president say that, you know, America does not want things that it already does on its own, for example, automobiles. Mm-hmm. But then he goes on to say that he believes Canadians will be happy with the deal when the deal is reached with whatever comes out. So what does the president envision as being a mutually beneficial deal between Canada and the United States?
I think and you'll also remember on autos, the president said, I want America to make autos and I don't know the exact words, but America to make autos and to make money making autos. And then he said, and I want Canada to do the same. So I envision an agreement that allows and permits and facilitates the entree of Canadian-produced automobiles and automobile parts into the United States. There may be caps, there may be quotas, and there may be probably be some level of tariffs, because that's what we're doing with every country in the world. Is getting, it falls under this regime of tariffs and those types of things. And then you just look to the future, okay? The president talks about energy dominance, not of America, of North America. Think of what we could do together to bring and make sure that North America is energy dominant. I think the president and I think the Prime Minister has talked about the same thing. One death of a Canadian or an American to fentanyl is one too many. So think about the cooperation and the lives that we can save, working together on fighting cartels, the importation of precursor materials that allow the production of these deadly materials, working together to protect the Arctic, to protect the North American continent, like we've done for years with NORAD. We've got, we're not trying this stuff for the first. These are things that we can move forward on. I met with some mayors this week from Canada. It was awesome, because what were they talking about? They all, I guess there's an organization that has 200 communities in Canada and 200 communities in the U.S. who live on one of our most valuable commodities, fresh water. And they're in there and they're saying, and what we all know is that fresh water is the oil in 20 years. It'll be as magical, powerful, and important in 20 years as what oil is today, because industries need it, we need it, people need it, ag needs it, and all of these kinds of things. And these mayors were talking about, we want to work with you guys, okay? Because as that happens, there will be threats to fresh water. And when I was in Congress, we worked on a whole bunch of issues together with Canada to protect the quality and improve the quality of that freshwater asset that we share.
But to get there will have to be an acceptance on Canada's part that the auto industry will never be what it once was here?
Didn't say that. The president didn't say that.
But if you're talking quotas, you're putting a limitation on what is available here.
Well, right now we're importing, depending on the year, we import somewhere between 200,000 and 400,000 more cars from Canada than what Canada buys from the United States. Okay, president didn't say scale that back or whatever, but what the president wants production in the United States, and Canada's not our biggest issue on autos. Okay, but I think does it mean that it's unlikely that Canada's going to be producing 600,000 or 1 million cars more per year that are exported to the United States than what they import from the United States? Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. But again, it's a negotiation. And so, we may do one thing on autos, there may do something else on water, we may do something on energy, and it's the negotiators who actually put together the balance of, okay, hey, here's what it is to make sure that we get to a win-win. Because from our perspective, having a prosperous, a strong, and a safe Canada is much better than the alternative. These, people talk, well, you're going to drive us into the ground and all. That's not what we want. We want North America to be a strong neighborhood, a prosperous neighborhood. We've done that. We've demonstrated that for decades, and that continues to be the exact same direction that we want to move forward in. And there is, as we go through the negotiations on USMCA, it's great that we're doing it, because there are so many different opportunities out there that we didn't anticipate even 6-7 years ago that provide huge opportunities for us to work together and to grow the relationship. AI, energy, water, as I talked about, rather than, we've got all these problems and, we got to fix this and fix that or take care of that. This is an opportunity to structure that agreement to bring prosperity to Canada and America for the next 6 years, for the next 10 years.
I have two quick questions to ask you because I'm losing time here, but
okay.
I have a lot more. But very quickly, though,
we'll come back.
Any renegotiation, I would love that. Any renegotiation will involve tariffs, though. This idea of a tariff-free deal, as we had under NAFTA, as we had under the USMCA first version, that's now gone.
The president, I think, has made it clear, and his team have made it clear there will be tariffs. And again, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, okay? Because what we've seen as Pete, and I've never embraced the term free trade, okay? It doesn't exist because, and what we've seen a tremendous development on a global basis is that as we've entered in free trade agreements, what do we see a rise of? Non-tariff trade barriers, okay? And so it's kind of like trade has always been about negotiated trade agreements, and that's exactly what this will be. It will be another negotiated trade agreement.
Okay. Now, the review begins next year. There's already been work.
Started.
Yes,
Yep.
I know the work has already begun, but in terms of the three
Yep.
amigos sitting down and talking about it, that's really more next year, to my understanding.
Yep.
Is there any hope of any type of sectoral relief, as there was in October, evolving before this deal is renegotiated?
I think that having an interim agreement on the sectoral things would be a very positive thing for Canada and the United States. And I'm hopeful. I'm talking to the Prime Minister, his team, on a regular basis in terms of what my perspective is and how we can get this thing moving forward again. I'm also talking to the U.S. team. What needs to happen to get that to go? I think it would be helpful. These things are critical. If we would have fixed steel and aluminum, as we were so close to doing, guess what industry that would have impacted tremendously? Autos. There's a lot of steel and there's a lot of aluminum in automobiles, and we would have partially started to address some of the issues that we have with autos, but we weren't provided the opportunity.
You talked about a strong North America and a prosperous Canada, but in my mind, that raises a question about the policy that came out last week from the United States regarding security, national security for the United States, because in that policy there is a line that reads that the United States must be preeminent. So where does Canada fit in that? If there is the preeminence of the United States, does that necessarily relegate Canada to a secondary role?
Well, unless Canada wants to, Canada is not going to be I think it would be difficult for Canada to become the preeminent military power and economic power in the world, okay? I think what this says is we want America and our close allies, and we have no closer economic ally or a military ally than Canada. And so for us to achieve our objective in terms of being preeminent, I think what you've seen and what we've demonstrated over the last number of decades is that happens when we have a great relationship with Canada on those issues. And then it's Canada's responsibility to say, yeah, we see that same future going forward. I mean, give you an example. Canadian defense contractors, okay, America preeminence, okay, Canadian defense contractors, when they bid on American defense projects, they are categorized and they bid as American contractors, American suppliers. So a company in Toronto who builds parts for our Defense Department, when they bid for that contract, they're allowed to bid because when they send in the bid, it's as if it came in from a company in Detroit. Okay? That's how close this relationship is.
So when you use the word preeminence, that does not necessarily put Canada into a vassal state position?
No, take a look at what we have been doing, okay? Canada has been treated, there is no other country in the world where their companies can compete for, those types of U.S. government projects and come in and say, we're competing as an American company. As a matter of fact, most of those companies are absolutely prohibited, okay, from competing because on a lot of those projects, they're identified as the companies who are bidding or the products that we're purchasing have to be identified as being made in America. So the defense stuff that you're sending to the U.S. is identified as being made in America to allow them to be sold to the United States government. We look forward to reciprocity.
Okay. Listen, as I said, quickly running out of time,
yeah.
But I do want to ask you because it has been a very tumultuous first few months of your tenure here in Canada. What message do you want Canadian leaders to take away? Because the negotiations are not yet done. Obviously, an ad from Ontario has became an issue south of the border. So what message do you want Canadian leaders to hear?
The same message that we've been delivering for the 8 months that I've been here, and I think the American government and previous ambassadors have been delivering for years. Number one, we're open for business, but we want a booming business and economic relationship between the U.S. and Canada. I think 50% of the foreign direct investment coming into Canada comes from the United States of America. Canada is a great investor. I think they're the second largest foreign direct investor in the United States. So that tells us we are open for business. Canada's open for business, and one of our best trading partners, investment partners, is our neighbor. That message continues. We think that from a military standpoint, it's been a great NORAD has been around for decades and has helped secure North America from the threats that we faced. And we have new threats. We've got to protect the Arctic. We've got to protect against China. We'd really like to do that with Canada and use NORAD as the model for success. Maybe the third thing is in Fahrenheit, I think it's 80 degrees in Florida today. And it's probably a lot warmer in Phoenix than it is here. The Canadians are welcome. We would love, for those of you who have decided not to come to the United States or are considering it, we'd love to have you come or come back.
The U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. Now, what you heard is part of a longer conversation that will premiere on a new episode of Profile. You can watch it tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern right here on CPAC, also on cpac.ca and on our YouTube channel. We have a special episode of The Bureau Chiefs also coming up for you tomorrow evening. We hope you can join us for that conversation. Until then, you have been watching Primetime Politics. I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. Have a great night.